An entire generation of children were tricked into thinking Avatar: The Last Airbender was a great show. This was just before anime became mainstream in the West, right? Nicktoons released this series, this serialized cartoon about like the savior of the world going on this adventure with supernatural powers. It it isn't great. Okay? If you've seen like any kind of anime, if you've seen Dragon Ball, One Piece, Gundam, like Fist of the North Star, all of that's better than this, right? That is the big takeaway from Avatar: The Last Airbender, I think, is that it's anime for Westerners, right? It completely misses the point of what makes anime great. It's not well animated, it's not well written, it doesn't have like engaging characters or or well thought out political drama. It's just white people trying to appropriate Asian culture, basically, and failing at it, right? Avatar: The Last Airbender is one of the most overrated things, period, from my childhood. I got tired of people saying this was a great show back when it, even when it first aired. I was like completely done with it by book two. Traditionally, I used to say that the show was good up until like the end of book one, right? Like I used to like say that like, oh yeah, maybe the show had potential. I can appreciate the attempt at doing something like better than what every other cartoon was doing, right? Because at the very least, Avatar understood that like the problem with Western cartoons, like being overly just random access humor, as Christian would say, like you just don't have well written, engaging, well animated cartoons in the West anymore. Right? That hasn't been true since like the 90s at the latest, right? But like Avatar: The Last Airbender got a lot of hype simply because like, oh, it wasn't that, right? It was something different. But like, that's led to this weird culture, I think, where people really overstate the show's significance, they really overstate its quality, and they really do think this is one of the greatest shows ever, period. And it really just it really shocks me how it really is kind of like the kind of person who says the Percy Jackson books are great, or thinks that like Star Wars is like some cultural phenomenon. Like it's very shallow, narrow-minded thinking, right? It's not because like the story means a lot to you or it has some great message. It's simply because it's popular, right? There's really nothing more to it than that. Like Avatar has really nothing going for it from a storytelling perspective. And of course, I've talked a little bit about this before, like several times, but like I would like to come out today and say that like the people who think Avatar is a great show are wrong. There is no getting around this. The show fundamentally has no merit. It is a show about stopping a military conflict that is trying to have an anti-violence message. They're trying to stop the Fire Nation, but we can't do it in a violent way. Like again, there's a reason why the ending was so hated when it first premiered, right? People understood that the message that violence is bad doesn't really fly in a show about stopping an evil invasion with violence, right? Aang puts his own enlightenment, his own values over stopping the bad guys. And again, this is, I think, a deplorable message because you have this like society that is objectively causing all these problems, right? They're going to other lands, they're genociding populations, they're ruining the natural order of the world, right? And like Aang doesn't want to stop them with violence. Again, like this is the issue with the show. Like when you put it very, very simply, is that it makes you, it wants you to think that violence isn't the solution to the problem, in spite of clearly demonstrating in the context of the show that violence solves the problem. Again, this is simply bad storytelling, right? The themes don't mesh well with what actually happens in the show. And the creators have always like tried disputing this, like saying that like, oh, you just don't get it. Oh, we're too big brain for you. But again, it's very similar to like what comic book creators do. I suppose this is the issue with a lot of leftist creators in general, where they really think that promoting like tolerance and like acceptance in their work is like some world changing thing, but the reality is that nothing has changed. Like Avatar has not left a lasting impact on the world. It isn't remembered for the right reasons. It is an overhyped mess. You simply have a group of man children and woman children, usually women children actually, in their like 30s who think this is like the greatest show ever. Or- like it's kind of shocking seeing how many people on X who will like come out and try to tell you that like uh like Korra is one of the best female characters of all time. Oh, like ignoring all the problems with that series, which, if anything, is even worse than Avatar because of all the plot holes in between the two series. But like, even from the get go, right? Like, I'm not gonna like sit here and say, oh, it got like Avatar got bad after book two. Like, no, it was bad from the get go. It cannot compete with something that's more grounded in like actual reality. Dragon Ball is a really good example where Goku is a person who goes on an adventure, meets new friends, and like constantly grows and evolves, right? Dragon Ball never tries to to tell you that violence is objectively wrong, right? It'll have characters like Gohan who don't like fighting, but they'll understand that they have to step up and do things because like that it needs to be done, right? Like in a way, Dragon Ball is infinitely more based than Avatar for that reason. Is because they do understand that there is a place for everything. They do understand that violence has a purpose, right? They do understand that sometimes you have to do this kind of thing. None of this like leftist moralizing about like, oh, how violence is always bad. No, no, not at all. That is nothing but propaganda from a group of people who do not want you to fix problems that need to be fixed.